Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Pope Metallicus, and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion, where today we're going to go over one of the kind of unsung heroes of the Bay Area. Huge influence on the first wave of thrash metal, and just an excellent band overall. Absolutely classic band by the name of Exodus. And to help me do that, we have our resident heretic and headbanger. We have Imperatus. Welcome back, dude.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Not much. Just here to chronicle one of the, I think, underappreciated bands from that era.
I wouldn't say underappreciated, but maybe lesser known.
Yeah, that's probably a better term for it.
Especially back then, they've gotten more recognition these days.
Yeah, I think they're one of those bands that at the time kind of flew under the radar, almost like Testament, and then in later eras they kind of
Well,
shone.
I've always been a firm believer there wasn't a big four, there was a big eight.
Yeah, true.
You had your big four, then you had Overkill, Exodus, and Testament. And depending on the person, that eighth spot could be Possessed or Death Angel or Dark Angel or Forbidden.
So the one I usually see
maybe Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah, I could see that kind of. They're more speed metal though.
Yeah, no, they were pretty thrash.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially their older shit. Like, go listen to
No
Place for Disgrace.
Yeah, their early stuff is pretty raw. But no, that's like, I usually heard Death Angel in that conversation, but yeah, I can't disagree with any of those.
I mean, because if it wasn't for Possessed, we wouldn't have half the shit we listened to.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or at least me, anyways.
And of course, they formed in 1979, right about the same time all these bands did, late 70s, early 80s. And they didn't get a recording deal till 1985 when they finally released this masterpiece called Bonded by Blood, starting with the title track and still one of their best tracks.
Yeah. I mean, this is also the only album with Paul Bailoff.
That's true. But these guys started out on a high note. Like, this entire album is just freaking savage. And one thing I was noticing that going through this again is all the Venom worship that's in this record.
Yeah.
Because, Venom's early stuff is much more thrash metal than anything we'd call black metal today.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But at the time, black metal was the term. So here we are.
I don't even think they really called it black metal then.
Well, I mean, they did create an album with that
title. They did, but I don't think they were deemed as a genre as that.
Well, most lists I see put them in the NWO BHM movement, which time period wise makes sense.
Yeah. Or early speed metal.
Yeah, which also makes sense for the time. And before we get too far into it, thank you guys for showing up. Let's see who's in the chat here. We've got Lord Thoth, praise be. Sentinel, I know you can't be here, man, but thank you for sharing it out. And, well, always happy to see you. Matt G, as always, hello, sir. And Soul Assassin, always in the chat. Ruben, how's it going, man? And, thank you guys all for showing up. Just to show for one quick second, I do have a Stream Elements link in the description of this video. If you guys do feel like supporting the channel, I do really appreciate it. I don't advise you do it, though, because it just encourages me to keep doing this. So, if you do have a couple of bucks and you want to throw my way, I absolutely appreciate it. And with that, let's get into this freaking Titan. And let's pull up the track listing here, because, you've got a whole huge number of their classic shit here. They're self-titled, Bonded by Blood, Lesson in Violence. Like, is there a bad song on this record?
Not really, no.
This is one of those ones kind of like Kill 'Em All from Metallica, where you can just throw it on and just rage out for like 45 minutes and still not be bored when it's over.
Yeah, no, it's a classic record. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, and sometimes things are classics for a reason.
I mean, this wasn't the first album I heard from them, but it was one I checked out pretty quickly once I heard them.
Yeah, I came into them kind of on their newer stuff, and I wasn't the biggest fan. And a couple of friends of mine kept pestering me to come back to their early stuff, and I really haven't. I think I've gotten more into thrash metal as I've gotten older, which is kind of weird.
I mean, look at me. I've gotten older and I've gotten more extreme and heavier when it comes to music tastes.
Well, yeah, that's true. I didn't say we weren't weird.
I mean, honestly, I didn't get into Exodus until Fabulous Disaster.
Yeah, that was the first stuff I really got into from them. Like I'd heard of them before. And then I had a couple of friends who kept pestering me that they were great. And then I think I went to see them live with Testament in California. And I think, again, one of those bands where once you see them live, you get it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah, this is kick-ass.
I mean, I've got it. I like Testament as soon as I heard them, and it was when I saw them live, it just cemented it.
Yeah.
And also,
there's so many
they're one
bands
of the
that
loudest
I've gone
fucking
down
bands
that
I've ever
journey
seen.
with, like, I've seen them live with somebody else, and like, wow, okay, I didn't realize they had all that. I'm gonna go freaking listen to that now. Like, when I saw them live, I'm glad they spaced out Bonded by Blood and Toxic Waltz, because I'm not sure half the crowd would have survived it.
Yeah. I don't know. Testament isn't so nice when I've seen them live. They've gone like over the wall into like The Preacher.
Oh God, that must have been absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, when you talk about the musicianship on these records, Gary Holt, absolute monster of a guitar player, like, and Rick Hunolt does pretty good too. And like Sentinel said, Tom Hunting is one of the best thrash drummers out there. Like, the man just is a machine.
Yeah, but that's the thing when it comes to thrash metal and even black metal. And well, I guess you can say about death metal too. If your drummer's bad, your band's gonna suck.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there's no getting around that. If you don't have a guy who can play multiple different tempos on a dime, like, it's gonna just sound like shit.
Go listen to the first Summoning album, then you'll realize why they switched styles that they did.
Yeah, I'll have to get more into that.
The first album is not good.
And, you know, some bands are like that. I mean,
and it was mostly because of the drummer.
Of all time, and their first album's horrible.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Summoning completely changed their sound because their drummer was so bad.
Yeah. And, you know, if you can't change your drummer, you change your sound around him.
They went from drummer to drum machine, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that too. If you can't find a drummer who's willing to play with you, well, the drum machine's over there, and you get what you get. But no, Tom Hunting is brilliant. Like you say, this is the only album to feature Paul Bailoff on vocals, and I think that's kind of a negative on overall, because Paul's a great singer.
Yeah, he is.
Not to say that his replacement didn't do great, because I love the kind of eerie tone that what's the replacement's name?
Steve Souza.
Oh yeah, but like that kind of snarl he puts in his voice is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
like and you'll hear it on the later records. But overall, this first one, like, I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you've never listened to Testament, go back and listen to this shit and go forward, because it's pretty much all good from here.
You mean Exodus, not Testament?
Oh God, yeah, Exodus. Sorry, we were just talking about Testament.
Yeah, I mean, they did have one bad album in the 90s.
Yeah, well, everybody had bad albums.
I forgot what the name of the album was called. That's how it was. It was the one after Impact is Imminent.
Yeah, the 90s were not a good time to metal.
No, not really.
I'm pretty sure good music was outlawed.
But
yeah, that was. But other than that one record, everything they've released is pretty solid.
Yeah, I didn't really get into too much of the Frank Duke stuff.
I think that's where I got started in it, and like now going back and listening to it now, I don't hate it. It's certainly not anywhere close to this, but I don't hate it.
Yeah.
But the styles change over time, and I think in a lot of the more extreme metal genres, you kind of lose your edge over the course of decades, because it's hard to keep up this level of anger and aggression.
Yeah.
Especially as you get older. Like, you just kind of go from pissed off at the world to, whatever, man. But like again, just like Metallica with Hit the Lights and a couple of other tracks like Whiplash, like especially Bonded by Blood is just kind of a love letter to the metal crowd itself and into the live show. And I think I've always loved it for that, where it's just absolute aggression. And this album is pretty much just straight up more like Slayer, where it's more aggression than melody. And they do get into that later in their second and third albums, where they kind of like not slow down, but they do have a couple of different styles that they can do pretty well.
Yeah.
And yes, Sentinel. I mean, we're still grumpy in our old age. We're just grumpy at different things.
Yeah, I don't call myself a curmudgeon for nothing.
Well, you know, I'm rapidly approaching that age myself, where it's just like, why is the line at the DMV so long? Why is the pizza man not here yet? But yeah, I mean, and following that up, this album up with their second release, Pleasures, is freaking awesome. Let me hide that for a minute. Pleasures of the Flesh, like they never really slowed down on their second release. Like
no,
Metallica for Ride the Lightning got a little bit more melodic after their first release. These guys didn't. They just kept going with that speed.
Yeah, this was actually one of the first CDs I had ever bought.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because I think like the first 2 CDs I had bought, because everything I had up until that time was on tape when CDs were becoming a thing. Yeah, was this Fabulous Disaster, and I want to say Testament New Order.
Okay, that's a pretty solid list.
Yeah, well.
I think the first 3 albums I bought were And Justice for All, Appetite for Destruction by GNR, and then I want to say Peace Sells, because I was a Megadeth fan, or as a Metallica fan, and we recommended Megadeth, so I went and bought that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, all 3 great albums, but you know, not the band's best output, except in the case of GNR, where it's the only good output they have.
Pretty much.
And Soul Assassin, I've listened to the new album. I gotta say, I'm not a fan. Like, I thought they were coming in the right direction with their latest release, Atlas Rise, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. But yeah, this new one, it's just kind of like, like I don't hate it, but it's just kind of there. It's like, yeah, the Sentinel's right. Like some of it's good, and then some of it's just kind of meh. Like I just don't care about most of it. But Pleasures of the Flesh is not that kind of record where pretty much all of this shit's killer. I like the intro to Deranged, where they're basically just having a conversation with a crazy person.
Right.
Like all that intro line where he's just going on about random shit.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Yeah, Faster Than You'll Ever Be is pretty good too.
Yeah, Faster Than You'll Ever Be is freaking awesome. The title track is really interesting. And you know, Chemic Hill and shit like that is also pretty good. I got some real mid 80s Slayer vibes off of this.
Yeah.
Like when Slayer was at their peak. So that is no bad thing to say, because
it makes sense. They're all from the same area.
Yeah, and they were all kind of, you know, bouncing ideas off each other probably, because these guys were all touring together too. So it would make sense to me that they would all just kind of be jamming together, and you know, the sounds are going to kind of mix together after a while. Not to mention, I mean, before going off to found Metallica, Kirk Hammett was in Exodus. which also makes a lot of sense if you listen to some of the solos in their early stuff. They
I thought it was
sound very
Testament that he was
organic.
in.
What's that?
I thought it was Testament he was in.
No, he was in Exodus.
I knew it was one of the two.
Yeah, and you know, he's one of those interesting ones where your lead guitarist leaving is actually a good thing for the band because they got Gary Holt and Metallica got Kirk Hammett because Dave Mustaine left to create Megadeth. So we actually ended up gaining out of that. And that we got three kick-ass bands rather than one.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least for a while.
It's just funny how that works though with bands. I mean, they're so incestuous in some cases.
Oh yeah, I mean,
look at the black metal scene, especially like the mid '90s, where everybody was in somebody else's band and they had their own band and all these side projects.
It's like 6 Degrees of Mayhem, essentially.
Kind of, yeah.
Where it's just like this guy played in this band, who played in this band with this guy, who's now in the original band with a different lineup. Oh, it's freaking awesome. Yep, there we go. And then, yeah, Soul Assassin, I'm already at the point where I'm willing to tell people to stay off my lawn, but I live out in the woods, so no one comes here. So, you know, it's a win-win. But
yeah, no, this album is. I think this to me was the beginning of them cementing their place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of thrash metal bands that came out in the 80s that kind of had 1 or 2 albums that were awesome. Looking at you, Nuclear Assault. And then just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because their output is actually outstanding. But then for whatever reason, like, you know, the band doesn't get along or their label drops them or whatever, and they just kind of disappear back into the ether.
Yeah.
Well, without anyone really ever getting to know them. And these guys come out with 2 absolute bangers in a row. So, like, I think that kind of made people sit up and start paying attention to them. Because these guys are as good as Slayer or Testament. Or
you know what it is, though? Nuclear Assault was an East Coast band.
Well, yeah, but
I think they're from New York.
Well, they came out a little later, too. But there's a ton of bands from this period that all kind of disappear.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, Nuclear Assault's also another band that, you know, they had Dan Lilker, who used to be in Anthrax.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
That's true. And yeah, that's true too. I know these guys had a big influence on Dime.
These guys had a lot of influence on a lot of the stuff that came out late 80s, early 90s.
Well, yeah, because these guys were kind of driving the bus, and everyone else was kind of looking at them like, yeah, that fucking kicks ass. And you guys are successful doing this? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. Thrash was kind of an underground genre in the early 80s, and then by the end of the decade, I mean, Metallica was touring arenas.
Yeah.
And Slayer was doing huge shows. I mean, like, these guys were it in terms of, like, these guys were the new big thing in music for a while. Until the record labels realized you can't control these guys, and then kind of killed half of them. Or, you know, at the very least, caused some serious turmoil in the industry in the 90s. Because like, oh yeah, we have this new thing. It's called grunge. You should listen to it. And everyone's like, yeah, but it kind of sucks.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard me say I had multiple people during my high school years coming up like, oh, hey, did you hear this new metal band? And it turned out it was some fucking grunge band. I'm like, oh, for the love of Christ.
Oh yeah, because you get real. It's like, I feel like me, you get really excited for a second, thinking you're about to hear something awesome, and then it's like, oh yeah, they're called Nirvana. Oh.
Yeah, pretty much. That was one of the big ones.
Yeah.
And I'm, standing there in like a Napalm Death shirt, like, really?
Right. It's like, come on. At least give me like, you know, something a little aggressive. Something like, you know, maybe 90s Metallica or something like that. Like, give me something with balls. Although by 91, Metallica's balls were firmly in their label's purse.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I can't help but think that's why they kind of sold out. And these guys kind of remind me of how Metallica could have been if they kept going.
There's a lot of the bands from this era that you would look at other bands who sold out or failed or whatever, and like, and you just sit there and think of what could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those days where I was like just coming into music. I was probably 10, 11, and like just getting into my own stuff, my own music and stuff like that. And that was when Napster was huge. That's where probably half my music library came from. I still have half that shit.
Yeah,
On an external hard drive somewhere.
That's how I found out about a lot of bands.
Oh yeah. Because we weren't affluent enough to buy the record. So
Well, it wasn't even that. Not that I was, but because I wasn't. But for me, and around that time was when I started getting into black metal.
Yeah.
And being able to hear one or two tracks to sit there and go, okay, next time I'm out at Rock Fantasy, which is the shop by me, I could pick this album up and I know I'm getting my money's worth.
Yeah, that's kind of how I did it too. Where it's like I used Napster as a way to like get into bands and have it digitally because CD burners weren't really a thing yet in like the late '90s, early 2000s. Like they were becoming popular.
They were
around, but they were expensive, so I didn't have one.
Mm.
And so you could either create a mixtape on your from cassette or you just download it off the internet. And then I usually went out and bought the records later.
Yeah, I mean, because I had already gotten burned a couple times on some mediocre black metal. I'm like, am I really going to get into this? 3 out of the 4 albums I bought are just, they're okay.
Well, that's the thing with a lot of the early black metal albums too, or bands too. Like they'll have 2 really great albums, and then the rest will suck.
Yeah,
or they just disappear off the face of the earth.
Oh, you're lucky if you get more than one.
True. Yeah.
I can think of a band right off the top of my head that released one album and then vanished.
Which one's that?
A band called Kvist, Kvist.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. I didn't realize they'd only had one.
They only have the one record.
One album, but
they have the one record, and then they went off and did whatever.
Yeah, and Soul Assassin, I knew guys who did that too, and some of that ended up on the internet, and the audio quality is terrible. But it's you do what you can. We used to do that shit too, like hold a microphone up to the freaking speaker, record it, and then freaking put it on a tape. But yeah, like that. Those were interesting times before, the government ruined everything.
Yeah, well.
And then LimeWire was around for a while, but you were more likely to get a virus than an actual functioning song.
Yeah.
Which I can't help but think was intentional.
It's entirely possible, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we'll sabotage it. It's like we can't regulate it, so we'll just damage the people that actually partake.
And to be honest, everything that they did didn't work.
Yeah.
People are still downloading music online to this day.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like the man says in Serenity: you can't stop the signal. Once it's on the internet, it's out there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's always going to have a copy of it somewhere. It's just a matter of finding that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the underground tape trading scene in the 80s and 90s, where especially a lot of underground shit that never really got out of its local area. Like if you know a guy who knows a guy, you can get it.
Right.
Whereas nowadays, like with the rise of YouTube and Bandcamp and all that, like it's really easy for bands that are just kind of getting started to get their music out there, which is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works, because I got a buddy of mine who's friends with this one band that's local to my area called Primeval.
Yep.
And every time I tell him that people from outside of the area mention them, he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" It's like, nope.
It's called the internet, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, let's face it, 2 of the bands that that you got me into in the last year, Bloodywood and Black Braid,
yeah,
are both fantastic, and we never would have heard their names before probably 2010.
Black Braid, I probably would have.
Well, yeah. But that's 'cause
Bloodywood, that remains.
you're like a
It's hard to
bloodhound
say.
with black metal.
Yeah, well, he's also from New York, I believe.
Is he?
I think he's from upstate New York. 'Cause if you go to their
Okay.
webpage, he makes references to the Adirondacks.
Oh, okay. For some reason with Native American, I figured he'd be out Midwest or Southwest.
You would
somewhere.
think, because I was talking to a buddy of mine who is Native American. I was telling him about the one song, so I was asking him what the fuck, the ghost dance was, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that nonsense." And then he explained, and he's like, he's like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh, all right." And then I showed him the picture. He's like, "Yeah, that's no one in the band. That's actually a photo from like the 1800s."
Oh.
He's like, and that's one of the guys who came up with that movement.
Gotcha. All right.
I was like, oh, okay.
No, it's kind of cool to see some of that like tribal music come back too, like Hai Lung or the Who. Pretty cool to hear like traditional music from other cultures get mixed in with modern stuff. Like Bloodywood's great with that traditional instrumentation along with basically metal.
Yeah, they're about to go on another U.S. tour too.
Are they really?
Yeah, starting May 2nd. They might be coming near your area.
Ooh.
I mean, the closest coming to me is New York City, and I don't go to the city for shows. It's too much of a hassle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long ride into the city from where I'm at.
Well, for you, I mean, it's not too bad for me, but just dealing with the city is.
That's also true. It's just dealing with cities. It's just no.
And New York is always a pain in the ass.
Yep, I've been through there twice. I really, really don't like going through New York.
No, actually, it doesn't look like they're coming anywhere near you.
Oh, that's unfortunate. And yeah, Soul Assassin metal is one of those weird genres that you can mix a lot of different styles into.
Yeah.
And it all sounds pretty good.
Look at that one band I linked to from Germany, that Finsterforst.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever says an accordion is not a metal instrument can fuck right off.
Yeah, because that shit kicks ass. It's all in what you do with it. And like we always say on the show, anybody who says keyboards aren't metal, to just laugh at that person because they have no idea what they're talking about.
Another prime example, I mean, we're deviating, but then again, we always do.
Yeah.
Would be Korpiklani from Finland.
I don't think
and somewhere Mila's probably cringing with my bad pronunciation of that. But the one guy's other project is literally a folk music band. It does traditional Finnish folk throat singing. They have an accordion player who the traps on that guy have got to be like Hulk sized.
Yeah, accordion players are freaking ripped.
They use a bunch of traditional instruments. Hell, they used I want to say they used a hurdy-gurdy in an album.
I've heard people use a hurdy-gurdy in modern albums before. It's kind of
crazy. I'm probably pronouncing the band name wrong, but Illuviti.
Yeah, Illuviti, yeah.
Yeah, they actually have a hurdy-gurdy player.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I hadn't heard it in their songs, but I've only listened to a couple.
It's there, but it's more in the background. Their mix is a little...
My buddy Jimmy got me into them.
Their mix is a little modern for what they do, so hearing certain things you don't hear stand out as much, whereas somebody like Korpiklani, you're hearing everything. You're hearing the fiddle player, you're hearing the accordion, you're hearing whatever other instruments they're using.
Yeah, true. But yeah, that getting back to Exodus, like, a lot of what we were just talking about, those guys all grew up listening to this shit and kind of inspired them. And not to be underestimated, like, these guys are right up there with, I would actually put them in the big four instead of Anthrax.
I wouldn't. Like I said, I don't think there's a big four. I think there's like a big 8.
Yeah, that's true.
And Anthrax definitely deserves to be on that list.
Yeah, I'm inconsistent with Anthrax. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not.
Their first 4 records are outstanding.
Yeah, that's true. Their early stuff is really good. And then after that, they kind of get a little off in the weeds.
Mm-hmm. If you sit there and go and look at, like, for example, Among the Living or Spreading the Disease.
Yeah, those are both fucking phenomenal.
You got tracks like Indians and Gung Ho.
Madhouse. Antisocial's off one of those too, isn't it?
No, Antisocial's off of what the hell is the name of that album? Because that was the album I got my buddy into Anthrax. Who a buddy of mine's not really like this big metalhead, but there's certain bands that he likes thanks to me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anthrax, Iron Maiden, Testament. That album is State of Euphoria.
Okay, yeah, that's right. But I mean,
and I think was their fourth album.
Okay, so yeah, like that's like kind of the tail end of their classic period.
Yeah, I would say Persistence of Time is.
Yeah.
Because that record was actually pretty good too. It's just that one is where they began to make changes because they had longer songs and so on and so forth, but they didn't go completely off key or anything like that. It was once they lost Joey Belladonna and picked up John Bush, I was like, yeah, this ain't working for me anymore.
Yeah, Joey was kind of the heart of that band. In a lot
well,
of
they
ways.
Also changed their sound too, because when you had like the sound of white noise, it was like, this doesn't sound like Anthrax.
Yeah. Which Anthrax to me was always at their best when they were kind of the punk side of thrash.
Yeah.
Like songs like Antisocial, Got the Time, like Caught in a Mosh, shit like that. Whereas these guys kind of really stuck true to the more like to their sound. Like they don't sound like anybody.
No, they don't, which is a good thing.
Yeah, like they sound like Exodus, which is great. And like you say, they stuck to that 80s thrash thing of kind of having a lot of shorter tracks on their records. Like a lot of these on this album are only like 3.5, 4 minutes, and then there's one the title track that's like 7.
Mm-hmm.
So like doing that once on a record is fine. Like especially if it's a kind of a longer piece, especially if it's the title track, you kind of play around with that one, and then the rest are just kind of quick in and out, hit it.
Yeah.
Kind of tracks. And a lot of this early stuff too, you can tell it's made to be played live.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is just amping up the crowd essentially. Like a lot of the beats and shit like that, like you can just tell it was made to make people fucking mosh.
Well, yeah, look at the breakdown in fucking Indians.
Oh god, yeah. Like that shit's just like, yep, we know exactly why this is in the track.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not a bad thing because, like, you should be making songs to be played live.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a metal band, your live show is your fucking soul as a band. Like, you need to center it around your live show. First of all, because that's the only way you're ever going to make money. Because God knows the label's not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And second of all, I mean, that's where your audience is guys in little dingy bars and freaking 2,000 person arenas that are just ready to throw down.
Yeah, most of my great show stories are not from arenas.
Yeah, it's like the little 1,200 maybe 1,500 person venues that are just really cool.
I wouldn't even say that big.
Yeah,
the one place I made, the Chance Theater, was maybe 1,000. Maybe.
Yeah, I think like the Palladium in Worcester's maybe 1,500. I have seen some excellent shows there, though.
No, I've seen so many great bands at the Chance. So many. Testament, Overkill, Exodus, Chrysion. What else have I seen there? God, Cannibal Corpse, like 1,000,000 fucking times. Morbid Angel. Oh God, just the Misfits.
Yeah,
but that was the weirdest show I've been.
Yeah.
Well, it was more recent for one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So they're all old, and it sounded like they just played one long continuous song because they sounded like shit.
Oh.
And me and my buddy felt like we were the two oldest people there that weren't parents that were bringing their Hot Topic kids there.
Yeah, that unfortunately was the Misfits' fate, was having a logo that was popular with teenage girls.
Yeah, pretty much.
And really, let's face it, they haven't been good since Danzig left.
I didn't mind some of the stuff with the guy that replaced him. What was it, like Johnny Graves or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
yeah. They're a couple after Danzig were actually pretty okay.
Because they didn't change their sound, and they didn't change what they wrote about.
True, and then they kind of did all of that at once, and it's just like, ew,
Yeah.
no. Like you guys, like they went from being pretty extreme to like pop punk. It's like, no, go back.
Yeah. Well, they were always kind of pop punk.
That's true a little bit.
At least in their sound, maybe not what their lyrics were, but some of the sound and some of their songs were very. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
You're going to be singing songs about campy 50s horror movies.
Yeah.
They're not exactly going to be the most brutal shit in the world.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like doing a horror theme is one thing. We've all seen King Diamond.
Cannibal Corpse has been around for almost 30 years.
Yep. And they do great, but doing it based off of 50s, really B horror movie is
actually, I think Cannibal has been around for over 30 years at this point.
Yeah, shit.
Their first album came out in 89.
Yeah, so we're approaching 35 years.
Yeah. And who would have thought a band that sounds like that and has lyrical content like that would last 30 fucking years?
No, I mean, you can never tell.
Don't get me wrong, they're all great guys. I've met them a bunch of times. Like Alex is a really chill dude. George is George.
Yeah.
Good dude, but he's something. All those guys have always been very cool to fans, so I'll give them that. And they are considered the biggest death metal act.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the one everyone knows.
Yeah, so this, something, for a band like that to be just chill with everybody.
I feel like a lot of bands are like that as long as you get them in the right mood.
I've met a couple that were douchebags over the years.
Yeah.
Morbid Angel were a bunch of pricks.
But usually those bands don't last very long.
Not always. It depends.
It depends on if your music output is that good. Like, you can be a dick if you're on top of the world.
Pretty much.
But once that's gone, you're toast. Whereas these guys, really, they've just been Exodus their entire career.
Yeah, I mean, I met Gary Holt once at one of the shows, actually at that place, The Chance. Just real quick, hey, man, love the band, great, cool dude. Wasn't,
Yeah, wasn't that the guy who you saw him with a different band?
No. That was, what the hell's the dude's name? He was the drummer from Forbidden.
Oh, shit.
Ended up in Slayer.
Yeah, fuck, what is his name? I know who you're talking about.
Paul Bostaff.
The fuck out of me now.
Paul Bostaff.
Yes.
I saw him playing with Testament. And everybody wanted to talk to him about Slayer and Slayer this and Slayer that. I'm like, I don't know, man. I thought your shit on the Forbidden records were good. He's like, you come stand over here and talk to me.
It's like, ooh, you know my old shit. Come here.
Sentinel, no, unfortunately, I did not. I've never seen Death live, unfortunately. Had an opportunity to, and I passed it up.
And Soul Assassin, that is a lesson that Glenn Danzig has learned the hard way repeatedly on camera.
You are not wrong. That video still makes me laugh.
Yeah, a man that short should not be that much of an asshole to people. Because he has just gotten decked so many times by his own fans.
And Sentinel, that was the tour that I saw them on, was the Formation of Damnation tour. When that happened.
Testament's another one we'll have to get to fairly soon here, because we're talking about a lot of the old 80s thrash guys. I've been going back through that era, and there's so many bands I want to talk about.
Are you familiar with, before we move on to the next record, there's a band I came across, and how I came across them was kind of, interesting. You ever heard of a band called Hollow's Eve?
Hollow's Eve. I think I've heard the name.
They've got like 4 albums. Tales of Terror, Monument, Death and Insanity, and Evil Never Dies.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard any of those, but
thrash metal band. Turns out, so back in my World of Warcraft days, woman in my guild, she's like, "Oh, hey, you're into metal, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm thinking this is gonna be some fucking ridiculousness. She's like, "Oh, you should talk to so and so in the guild." I was like, "Why? They fellow metalhead?" He's like, "Oh, he was in this band Hollow's Eve."
Okay.
Okay. Started talking to him. He's like, "Holy shit, you know your stuff."
Like,
Oddly enough, that also happened almost in a similar way a second time. I was playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, and I saw some guy running around with the name. It was Selenius. I'm like, I know that name. It was a black metal name. I believe it was one of the guys from Dimmu Borgir.
Okay.
And I'm talking to him. It wasn't one of the guys from Dimmu, but I was talking to him, and he's a guy from Norway, blah, blah, blah. We're talking. He's like, holy shit, for an American, you know your shit when it comes to black metal. I was like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. He knew guys from like Carpathian Forest. He hung out with them at the pub. He's like, oh, you should check out my band. And he sends me a link. He's like, yeah. Check us out. Let me know what you think. And it was just a YouTube link. I checked it out. It was not bad black metal. It was okay. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. He's like, oh, thanks. It was also the time when I was doing my radio show. I was like, yeah, I'll have to put you on my playlist for the upcoming show. He's like, oh, I appreciate that, Yeah, you're not wrong, Soul Assassin. You're not wrong.
Yeah, you like I literally ran into Phil Labonte at a show one time. Like I literally knocked him down in the pit. And I didn't realize it until I went to pick him up. I'm like, wait a minute, were you just on stage like a minute ago?
Yeah. He's a good dude though, from what I've heard.
Yeah, he is. He has a YouTube channel, I think. I'm trying to remember the name. Phil That Remains, that's it.
Yeah.
It's a shame he wasn't in a better band. Which I don't hate All That Remains, but mid 2000s.
Yeah, it's not my shtick either.
Yeah, it's like I don't hate it. Like I wouldn't go to a concert to see them, but I don't actively hate them either.
Yeah, if they happen to be on a bill, I'd be okay with it, but I wouldn't actively go to one of their shows.
Yeah, like they the time
nothing
I
against
saw
the
them,
people
they
in the
were
band,
opening
nothing
for
against
Volbeat.
the musical talents or anything like that. Just I have my own preferences.
Yeah, I think they were opening for Volbeat when I saw them, which was pretty cool. Volbeat's all right live.
They're okay. They're not bad. I mean, they're decent hard rock.
Yeah, they do a good show live. I'll give them that.
Now, have you ever heard those guys' prior band?
No.
It was a death metal band called Dominus.
Did not know that.
And I'll have to link you a couple of the tracks after the show, but it's something.
Okay.
It's definitely, you can hear a little bit of the Volbeat in there, but like very, very, very little. Other than that, it's just death metal.
Yeah. And we're going to get to that in early May, I think. I'm planning a intro to death metal for me with Bolt Thrower. So be sure you tune in for that, because I actually really do enjoy that band. I've been listening to it more and more.
Yeah, Bolt Thrower was very unique. Since most death metal at the time when they came out was, pure speed.
Yeah.
They toned it down quite a bit.
Yeah, they're more focused on just like that bone crushing tone, especially with the bass line. Their bass player is a fucking monster.
Yeah, she is something else.
Which is another thing we haven't mentioned on these guys yet. Their mix on these records has been pretty goddamn good all along.
Yeah, they found themselves a good sound engineer,
and they found him right away too. Like usually the first record is usually not that good, and then they'll improve. These guys hit it out of the park right away. And yeah, Soul Assassin, we do need to get that on the show at some point. Maybe with a goat's head, just like, yes.
I mean, there's got to be a caveat though. There's also got to be one for first 2 records only.
Yeah.
Or first 3 records only, as I'm fond of saying.
Yeah, we'll have a star system where the number of stars is the number of albums you should listen to by them.
Right.
That would be excellent. And kind of run out of time here because I do need to.
So let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, to the true masterpiece of this collection, Fabulous Disaster.
This album is so good. God, so good.
Everything on this rocks. Like, even this kind of slower stuff they put in, and even their covers on this, because they do too.
Yeah, they did. They did a couple covers on Pledges of the Flesh too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did. But like they do two really good ones here in Lowrider by War, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then Overdose by AC/DC, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is Overdose hadn't even been out that long when they released this record.
Hey, I got to step away for a minute real quick.
Okay. But yeah, this album, let's see if I have the track listing here. I think I do. Yeah, there we go. I mean, when you get into it, all of these songs fucking kill. And they're really interesting in that they have different, some of it has a little bit different instrumentation in it too. Like Cajun Hell, you'll actually get a little bit of like old school, like Bayou music, which is really cool. Fabulous Disaster, just absolute banger, just right out the gate with Last Act of Defiance and Fabulous Disaster as a pair. They're really, really solid. And then you get to the absolute classic and love letter to the pit that is the Toxic Waltz. It is just glory, especially if you see it live. I have seen them live with Testament, and yikes! Yes, Soul Assassin. It's right there. It's right there in the track listing on this one.
Yeah.
So
Believe
listen
it or
to
not,
this
that's the
record.
first
I
time
think
I
you're
ever
gonna
actually
fucking
heard
love it.
that song. Was the Exodus cover.
Yep.
Verbal Razors is a great fucking track.
Oh God, yes. Everything on this track,
Mhm.
everything on this record slays. And you know, we've all been to an Exodus show here. Like when the Toxic Waltz comes on, it's time to either get in or get out.
Yeah, they have another song too that has the same vibe.
Well,
Off their
Bonded by
next,
Blood too, but
no, off the next record.
oh, that's right. Yeah, we might get to that next time because we're going to be doing these guys again. They're such a huge influence on everything that comes later. You can't not talk about their history.
Yeah. The Lunatic Parade.
Oh, yep. So that's like their third absolute love letter to the mosh
Yeah,
crowd.
to the fans, and that's
how you know like you're dealing with somebody who gets it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, yes.
I don't remember if it was this album,
lunatics.
and I think it was this album. I think it was from the Toxic Waltz where they came up with the line "Good, friendly, violent fun."
Yes, good, friendly, violent fun to be had for all. Which, yeah, if there's a better way to describe a mosh pit, I've never heard it.
That's definitely not an Exodus pit, anyways.
Oh God, no! Pits at Exodus shows get crazy, and I love every second of it. And like it's like, especially with their set and the sheer amount of moshing that goes on during an Exodus show. Freaking, I love the line. So you better get insurance, no matter your endurance.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, no matter how tough you think you are, you're gonna get worn out.
And this is true. And you always can tell a band that appreciates the fans' response to their music by the looks on their faces when they're playing.
Oh God, yeah.
I've seen a few bands just kind of sit back, like, here we are in this little upstate New York town. You know, maybe 700 people, and the crowd is going absolutely ape shit. And I'm sitting there like, and you can see the look on their face of like, there's big shit-eating grins on their face, like, holy shit, these guys are going fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's what I've always loved about the smaller shows, especially, is you can really tell that the band is feeding off the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Sabaton's like that when you see them in a small venue, like especially I saw them at the Palladium twice, and apparently that was their first venue in the U.S.
Right.
So first of all, they're amped up going into it because they love that venue, and second of all, the crowd is just absolutely going nuts the entire set. It
was one of the times that I saw
every second.
I had seen Testament, because a lot of the times when I saw some of these bigger acts, it was one of their off days. We weren't part of the tour. It was like going from here to like from New York to Boston. They had a day off, so they played in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Okay.
So there was one show where Testament was playing. They played their song. It was probably like Over the Wall or Into the Pit or The Preacher, something that usually gets the crowd up and going. And And Chuck turns around and says after the song, he's like, Jesus Christ, guys, we just played down in New York City and you guys are destroying the reaction we got from them.
No, it was pretty similar to the Palladium where Sabaton, the first time I saw them, it was at the end of Metal Fest, like New England Metal Fest. I'd seen Testament headline the day before, which was awesome, especially seeing them in a tiny venue like that. And then the next night, they play. I mean, the show is 12 hours long, and I'd been there pretty much since the beginning because that's when like all the local bands come out, and you'll find some really, really good ones. And then Sabaton comes on as the headliner, and they're like, "Holy shit!" It's like Joaquin Phoenix says, "Like we're 11 hours into a show, and you guys have this much energy."
Yeah,
It's like, okay. We were absolutely going nuts, and they loved every second of it. And that's one thing I've always loved about the Toxic Waltz is like you can tell the shit-eating grins the band has on their face when they're playing it. Because everybody's just going absolutely mental the second they heard that riff. And I've seen video from other live shows that they've done, and yeah, that's always a crowd pleaser. Kind of like Angel of Death from Slayer, where like as soon as that opening riff starts, oh god, it's like you can just see the crowd part a little bit and then just start going. It's fucking nuts. I love it. But absolutely check out all three of these records. I would heavily encourage you to listen to Exodus in general. Go see them live if you can. I think they're still touring, right?
I'm sure they are.
I haven't heard they've called it quits yet. So I would assume they're still touring. They still kick ass live. The most recent tour footage I've seen from them was 2018, but then the virus that shall not be named happened. So definitely go check them out if they're in your area. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. And Soul Assassin, groove metal is a thing, and there's some pretty good bands in that.
Soul Assassin that said that. That was Papa Cotton.
Oh, fucking Papa Cotton. Sorry, I'm retarded. These things happen. But yeah, groove metal is a thing. You have bands like Meshuggah and Gojira in there, which have some really great shit. It's not my favorite genre of metal, but there's still some really great acts in there. Which, if you dig deep enough into pretty much any genre, you can find something you like. If you're into the music itself, like black metal is one of those ones. Like if you're not into that musical style, just stay away. You're not going to like any of it. But most other genres, you can usually find something you like. Hell, I'm not a huge death metal fan, and even I found one in Bolt Thrower that I absolutely adore. So
yeah, there's something for everyone in metal.
Yeah, pretty much. Like there's a band for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So apparently they're on tour as of last year. So absolutely go see them live. I've seen them live these guys once and Testament twice, and I can heavily recommend it. Especially in a smaller venue if you can get it. These guys really hit a new level in small shows. And again, this album, like especially Fabulous Disaster, all three of these you should listen to, but this, if you're a thrash metal fan, belongs in your fucking collection.
Yes, it does. You are not a thrash fan if you do not have at least this Exodus record.
It's like this belongs in your collection, right up there with the best of them. It's like right next to Rust in Peace and freaking Ride the Lightning. It should be right there.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then, with that all being said, Imperatus, what do you got going on this week, dude?
Just as of now, being on 70's show tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out 70's Rock Fan Show, we've been having a series of interviews with a bunch of guys who have been roadies for some pretty big bands over the years. One guy we were talking to last week was the tour manager for Dio for a couple of years in like 84 to 85. So, these guys know a lot of shit and they know some of the bands. So absolutely go check that out. We'll be on there tomorrow talking to, I think it's Mal Briggs.
Yeah, it is.
That we're going to be talking to next. And he managed a whole bunch of really, really big names in the industry. So hopefully we'll both see you there. Other than that, you can catch me obviously every Sunday here for Rock and Roll Religion. In a couple of hours, you can catch me live on Rumble for a Starfinder campaign that I'm doing with some of the guys I know from the community. So we're going to start streaming that. We were supposed to start streaming a couple of weeks ago, but I'm retarded and can't figure out how to work technology. So we'll see if that works this time. Other than that, I'm also going to be doing a review of Sabaton just released a cover of 1916 by Motorhead. So I'm going to do that over on Rumble. I'm actually going to go through the video and give my opinion on it if you guys are interested in watching that. I'm not going to do it on YouTube because YouTube is big gay when it comes to playing music these days. And I may start up a radio show over there at some point where I just kind of play music, listen to it, and hope you guys join me for that. But with that all being said, thanks for coming by. I appreciate everything you guys have done. Just make sure there's nothing I missed over here. I don't think so. Yeah, no. And again, I think next Thursday we're going to be doing part 3 of the history of rock and roll. So hopefully you guys will join me for that too. I'm having a massive amount of fun doing the research for that, and the conversation should be excellent. So with all that being said, take care, stay safe. I love you all, and I'll catch you next time.